So back in the 7th grade, I had this English class. Now this English class was frickin' painful, but not in the way that you might expect. The class wasn't particularly difficult, and I really liked the teacher. The main reason I didn't like this class was, well, the topic of this video. The classroom itself was fairly standard, but weirdly enough, it was the only room in my school building that didn't have any windows, at least to my knowledge. You'll understand why this is important later. Now, there were 3 main reasons why this class was so excruciatingly painful. The first of these reasons was that the class was double blocked. What this means is that I had the class for 2 class periods instead of 1, because the school I went to decided that the reading segment of the whole ELAR thingy deserved a class period of its own, even though it only took up 10 minutes each day. And since I had this class for 2 periods, it took up a whole 1 hour and 40 minutes. Well, if you want to be technical about it, it was 1 hour and 41 minutes, because each class was 49 minutes and there was a 3-minute passing period between the 2 segments. As you can imagine, the class tended to drag on quite a bit, and by the end of it, I was fairly worn out. The second reason was that I had this class right before lunch, and going off of my last point, having to wait for as long as I did was extremely painful. What makes this even worse is that I didn't get to eat lunch until 1:30, because my school divided up the lunch periods into A, B, and C lunch based on grade, and despite being a 7th grader, I ended up with C lunch, even though I should have gotten B. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why didn't you just bring a granola bar or something to hold you over until lunchtime? And to that I have to say that my school was really strict on its rules. Kinda off topic, side tangent, but one time I nearly got detention because I was walking through my school hallway without my shirt tucked in, which, while it happened to be one of the rules, literally no one enforced or even cared. The only teacher who cared about it was this one older lady who always was extremely grumpy, and I kinda got the impression that she hated kids. What makes me the angriest is that she singled me out from a group of like 8 or 9 kids passing by to use as an example, which was pretty petrifying back when it happened. But back on topic, since I really didn't have a chance to eat any food, I was forced to hold in my inner whale noises all the way until lunch. And in case you aren't aware, when you're hungry you tend to be a lot more tired, because your body doesn't have any food to provide itself with energy, which leads me on to the final gripe with the class. The atmosphere. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but my English teacher really knew how to create a relaxing classroom environment. The whole combination of her soft voice, the classical music she had pretty much always playing, and the fact that there was a lot less light than the other classrooms because there was no window, as I mentioned earlier. Now do you see where that ties in? I mean, it's a lot less important than I made it out to be, but I felt like including it. Okay, I'm off topic again. The whole combination made the class really easy to doze off in, and I ended up missing out on a ton of stuff because of this. And while this whole thing would be great for a home environment, it was definitely not what I needed for, you know, school. Which leads me on to the one and only time I fell asleep in class. It was pretty much an average day in the class, with one exception. I forgot or just didn't have enough time to eat breakfast. This meant, as I'm sure I've made fairly clear, that I was dead out of energy. To make things worse, the entire first half of the class period was going to be dedicated to reading out of the textbook, which is a fairly low effort task. This whole combination resulted in I was practically out cold. And do any of you know those moments in movies where the main character is sleeping in class and then they're woken up and they suddenly start spouting out random answers like 42, red, and square? Because I thought those were just comedic effect things until I started doing it while simultaneously trying to deny that I was asleep. Thankfully I didn't get in any trouble, but I made myself look like a complete dork, as well as becoming super paranoid that I'd fall asleep in class again, which made the rest of the school year pretty miserable. Fun fact, I actually lied to you earlier. I actually fell asleep in class one other time, also in 7th grade, but this time in my math class. But I'm not going to count it though, because it was more of one of those, hey, I have a headache, didn't get breakfast this morning, and I'm really tired, so do you mind if I take a quick nap because we're not doing anything else today? Kinda thing. Another thing about this class was that every so often we'd go outside and do the most random of things. Like, one time our entire class went outside to the football field, looked upwards, and just screamed as loud as we possibly could, and it must have looked really strange to any bystander driving by. One of my least favorite, but also favorite memories from the class was this one group project we did. The whole concept behind the project was that we were supposed to get into a group of 4 and create an inspirational video that kinda tied into the topic that we were researching, that I also happen to not remember because it isn't important to the story. So that's okay. What made this project as interesting as it was the fact that it was a group project. And since I only had one friend in the class, my other 2 group mates were 2 people who I really didn't know. and it was absolutely awful. There was this one guy in our group who was extremely intent on making the project a lot harder than it needed to be, and even went out of his way to make the creation process extremely difficult. At one point we were trying to record a scene where there was a reporter talking about an event that was part of our story, and rather than helping out, he started prancing around the hallway, interrupting us halfway through the whole 2 lines of dialogue that we had to get finished, causing us to waste 20 minutes arguing with each other. Eventually, we finally got to the point where we could actually edit the video, but we were a lot further behind than the other group, so we had to rush. And you wanna guess what he did during the whole editing process? Proceed to open up a soundboard on his phone and play air horns loudly in my ear while I was trying to concentrate. By the time we were adding background music, I was so fed up with the project that I didn't even argue with his persistence on using Darude Sandstorm as our theme song. Thankfully, actually, there's no happy ending to this story. During the time when we were presenting our projects to the rest of the class, I was sitting in the corner of the room with my head down, as our disappointment of a project played on the projector. At the very least, I can say that our project wasn't the worst one, but our competition was 20 other middle schoolers with no experience in video editing, so that isn't saying much. So I'm just going to end this video off here, because I really just want to take this video easy and not do anything overambitious, like I did with my previous one. I don't actually have anything else to say for this end card thingy, so I'll just leave you off here. Okay, bye.